On this week's episode, I'm joined by Jess from Circadian Kids. Jess is a mother of three, naturopath, and has been living the circadian lifestyle for the past 4 years after discovering Jack Kruse discussing the three core pillars of light, water, and magnetism on a podcast whilst on a family trip around Australia. In this episode, we discuss the impact of circadian rhythms on pregnancy, the effects of electromagnetism and non-native EMF on kids' development, connecting with nature, grounding, growing your own fruit and vegetables, and Jess's journey into naturopathy. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider sharing with your friends and family. And hi guys, welcome back to the WilStrong podcast. Today I am being joined by Jess from Circadian Kids. That is her Instagram handle. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today, Jess.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I'm really excited to be here, actually.
Well, I've been following you for I don't know, almost a year now. It wasn't long. Actually, sorry, it would have been about November. My wife joined Max Haynes' Circadian Reset group, and yeah, just through that, my wife's not on social media, but she was looking for some people who we could relate to. We've got two young children, and Max or someone in the group had recommended Circadian Kids, so I'm always the person who has to go and follow that person and then stalk them and stuff. And yeah, I did a pretty significant deep dive into you and started watching all your videos and stuff. And then I think it was a few weeks ago probably more than a few weeks ago now, a few months ago, you popped up and were posting some stuff about growing food. And I am currently sitting outside in my little food forest that I'm growing. And I was like, oh, I'll finally message you and yeah, kind of make that introduction.
I love that. Yes, and when you sent your photos through of your little food forest, I was like, yes. It's so good. And because me, and I think the same with you, we didn't actually we're not horticulturists. We didn't know what to do. We just figured it out. And that is like the best thing is just giving it a crack, right?
100%. I think we'll shelve this part of the conversation for later. I'd love to talk more about your growing story and yeah, just what you've got planned in the future. But first of all, could you give us a bit of an introduction to you and maybe a little bit of your super heroine origin story?
Yeah, so what are we in now? 2024. So back in 2019, I was traveling with my husband and two children at the time. So they were 2 and 4. And we got about a month into the trip and fell pregnant with our third child. So we got to Tasmania and we traveled around Tassie. I think Tasmania, for anyone that's not in Australia, is below, ACT, New South Wales? I'm in West Australia, so I'm very far away on the other side of Australia. But we drove over there and we spent 9 weeks traveling around Tasmania. And I had to pick up my husband from the airport. He was flying back to Western Australia to do some work shifts. And on the way, I was like, I need to listen to a podcast. And so I opened up my podcast, and the first one that came up was like, the title didn't actually resonate with me. It was Light, Water, and Magnetism. And I was like, yeah, that sounds okay. But what actually caught my eye was it said it was explicit language and be warned to listen to it. And I was like, oh yeah, this sounds good. So the kids fell asleep and I popped it on, and it was by Dr. Jack Kruse. And I was hooked. Like within the first 2 minutes of him speaking, I was just blown away, like literally a light bulb moment, because I had studied naturopathy, nutrition, and herbal medicine. I've been a practitioner of naturopathy for 10 years now. And I did not learn any of this stuff in college, right? Like this was all brand new to me and it just blew me out the water. And so, he was talking about light and how light affects our circadian rhythms. And I was thinking, I remember maybe touching on circadian rhythms in college, but it wasn't anything that was, a profound or lengthy topic. And he talked about the morning sunrise. Now, I had never watched an intentional morning sunrise I think I was 35 at that time, in the 35 years of my life. So this was a big deal for me to wake up the next morning and intentionally watch my first sunrise. And so that's what I did. I was 16 weeks pregnant with our third baby, and I never missed a sunrise from there on in. It's just been a complete like obsession. And so it took me 3 years. I really like integrated and embodied all that wisdom into my own family. And then it was not until 3 years later that I decided maybe I'll start sharing this, because people would ask me questions, and I was still getting a lot of questions from my naturopathic days, but I was actually specializing in fertility and hormonal health. And so moving into children's health was like another big eye-opener for me. But by this time, I had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a new baby. And so it's just really like the journey has just eventuated. It's been 12 months now since I started Circadian Kids, and it has been profound. Like, when you start something, you think, oh, does anyone really need this? Like, am I just going to be wasting my time? And from the moment I started, it's just been like this mind-blowing, boggling experience for me that, when you just do something and it becomes so habitual, you think that everyone's doing it. I'm like, oh, no one else is doing this. Okay, I'm going to try and be the light here and share what I can share, all through embodied experience. Like everything that I share is all that we do at home in our own family.
Yeah, that's one. Thank you very much for sharing your origin story. Yeah, and congratulations on having 3 children. I have 2, and I know how difficult that is. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. You guys were traveling all around Australia. You were on a big family trip with your first 2 born. Your first 2, sorry.
Yeah, we were. We got into Tassie and we did 9 weeks in Tassie, and we actually were we were going to continue up the East Coast, but before heading back to Western Australia. But it was actually that same time that all the borders started closing. So as we came back to Western Australia, each border shut behind us. But we weren't coming back because of that. We were coming back because we were having a baby. So I think I got home as about 30 weeks pregnant with him. And so from 16 weeks, I was the embodiment of, what I actually call him like my little circadian kid, because he is the most attuned kid to the natural world, right? The sun, the darkness, the natural rhythms of nature. Like he is the epitome of what I would call a circadian kid. And funny enough, I watched from 16 weeks, I watched every sunrise, and also honored the darkness. So which means blocking all blue light at night, and then getting enough sunlight on my belly. And so his circadian rhythms were already, the wheels and clocks were already turning. And so when he was born, he was actually born on the exact time that the sun was coming up for sunrise. And then from the day that he was born, we took him out for sunrise as well. And this little guy, compared to my first 2, I mean, that was a really challenging time in motherhood with my first 2. Very challenging with sleep, with, waking up tired constantly, not honoring the daylight and the nighttime cycles, and just being in a complete chaos where I was in, a really hard time in motherhood. And so having my third baby, it was a breeze almost. He was so attuned to being awake during the daytime and sleeping all night, although feeding during the night, but not actually waking up. Whereas my first 2 children would be awake my first baby especially, every 45 minutes during the nighttime. And I was completely beside myself. My second baby, I'd kind of like learned a little bit, but it wasn't until I really learned about circadian rhythms and just embodied that wisdom that it was like, oh, now I get it. Now I understand why my baby doesn't sleep. Having a bright blue lit screen from a phone in their face during the nighttime, and the lights on, like little suns above, LED lights like beaming down onto their eyes and their skin, telling them that it's daylight again, because their brain is all confused. And it all makes perfect sense now, right? But I always say, and the clients that I now teach is like, you only know what you know at the time, and you can only do better when you know better. And that makes, then it diffuses any guilt, any parental guilt that you might have had in the past, and just doing better when you know better.
Yeah, the parental guilt thing for me is a big one with my firstborn. He was born just at the start of COVID, so February 2020, and we had an amazing first 6 months. We spent so much time outdoors. He wasn't a great sleeper, but there was two parents to one child, so we made it work. My wife would kind of take the night shift, and then I would head out, and he would wake up say 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. and it was coming into summer. It was September by this point when he was about 6 months old, and I would just stick him in the pram and I'd walk outdoors, go down to the pull-up bars about 20 minutes from home, do pull-ups and dips, talk to the Vietnamese grandmothers, and they would be like, "Oh, your son Ye Tung Wa," which means he's so cute, and he's Dep Jai, which is handsome. And we would talk, and I got to build like this relationship with these people, and then I'd walk back and I would feed him, and we had this great time. But then second COVID, second COVID lockdown happened, and I kept him indoors a lot, even though we did spend a lot of time outdoors. In the early mornings, I'd throw the TV on because I'd be so tired. I'm like, oh my God, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. He's woken up. My wife's had the night shift. And I just kind of exposed him to a lot more TV during those years than I would have liked to have. Second time around with my second born, I wasn't caring for him as much because I wasn't off, but I already had learned a lot of these principles and a lot of these thoughts. And I was like, oh shit, right, I don't want to do this with my second born. So you said that your first two pregnancies were kind of difficult. What for you were the tangible differences of having like a non-aligned pregnancy for the first two, and then a circadian aligned pregnancy for the third? What were those big differences for you?
Yeah, I think, you're just not attuned with the natural cycles and rhythms of nature. So you really become disconnected. So, because we are not separate from nature, like all humans, especially children, are way more sensitive and more attuned to nature than adults. Adults have become more conditioned, and we're like, in the grind of life, whereas children are so attuned to their natural life force, which is nature. And, I think the first two pregnancies, it was like I remember my first pregnancy, we flew to Bali when I was 29 weeks pregnant. And, I just wouldn't do something like that again. Like, being exposed to all of the, electromagnetic fields, non-native EMFs, and just, yeah, I didn't, we came back from Bali, and he was actually born 2 weeks later, which was 6 weeks early. So, and it was the 2 days after my naturopathic graduation as well. And then the poor little guy, he was in the neonatal ward, the NICU, for 2 weeks. And I mean, what I know now to what he was exposed to in that 2 weeks of his life is just, there was a lot of parental guilt for quite a while. I've moved through all of that now, but there was no days to nights in NICU. It is a 24-hour day. So, and we only saw him during the day. We couldn't stay overnight. So first baby, we had to leave by around 6, 7 p.m. and we would go close to an Airbnb, and we'd come back in the morning at 6 a.m. We'd spend 12 hours with him. But what we didn't realize is that he wasn't getting sufficient darkness at nighttime. So we brought him home after 2 weeks, and for the first 6 months of his life was absolute torture, because this kid, his circadian rhythm obviously was just non-existent. It was so distorted, so disrupted. He didn't know his days to nights until around 6, 7 months, when we actually had to do some sleep training with him, because, and obviously, if I knew what I'd known now, we wouldn't have done the sleep training. If I'd known that all I had to do was sync his circadian rhythm, then wow, I mean, profound. And I know how easily that can be done now in such a short amount of time. But unfortunately, we had to go through this. I think we go through things for good experience in our life and for a reason. Nothing is by mistake. And everything that I have been through is now a really great, um, education to be able to share with the mothers and the parents that are coming to me now, talking about, and asking for help and guidance. And so, yeah, the second pregnancy, I, intuitively always wanted to be out in the sun more, but didn't make a conscious effort like in my third pregnancy. So my third pregnancy, every single morning I watched the sunrise. Every solar noon, so when the UV is at its highest above us, I was out in the sun exposing my bare belly, bare feet on the earth, like every single day. And then at night time, me and the kids would go for a little walk around the block. So we're exposing our naked eyes, so no sunglasses or contact lenses, and as much bare skin as possible to be able to, the sunset has got these, we've got photoreceptors in our skin that detect that waning light, and that helps us to wind down. And then when we come inside, we've got blue blocking lights. So we've got lights that don't have that emitting blue light or a flicker in it. And it helps the body and the brain to continue to wind down for sleep. And so I had this beautiful rhythm going on through my whole pregnancy. And I had an amazing, easy birth that was because it was very early in the morning, so darkness. We did have a very small red light because I wanted him to come into the world knowing that it is still dark, right? It is still nighttime. And then once he came out, exposed to the morning light, to the sunrise. And so his circadian rhythms, all of his trillions of cells and all these internal circadian clocks in his body, and know what's going on as soon as he's born. And the research shows that a baby's circadian rhythm doesn't really align until a couple of months. But from what I experienced with my child, if you do this throughout pregnancy, wow. I mean, the baby's born and they can have a beautifully synced circadian rhythm from day one. That was my experience with my third child.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. Yeah, wow. You mentioned you had to sleep train your youngest. Um, if you were to go back and not do that again, if you knew what you knew now and go back in time, what were those steps you kind of mentioned, going out and seeing the morning sunrise and getting your feet on the ground? But what would you do in that situation? Because I'm sure there's going to be plenty of parents that may or may not listen to this and go, they're in the exact same shoes. Like, my son doesn't sleep or my child doesn't sleep. How do I'm watching all these different videos on sleep training. It doesn't feel right because that was my experience, my wife's experience. We tried to do a bit of sleep training work and it didn't sit well with us, and we kind of made sacrifices in other ways to kind of figure out our own sleep situation. But now we try to stick to some of these core tenets of waking up with the sun and getting outside first thing in the morning. What would you do if you were to go back and, with your current knowledge, retrain your son's circadian rhythms?
Yeah, so it all begins in the morning, right? And when they wake up, it's actually really interesting because with the clients I'm seeing now, some clients I start with the syncing the circadian rhythms in the morning, and some we start at night time because both are equally important. So say if we were looking at the morning, so when they wake up in the morning, it's winter where we are now in Australia, in the Southern Hemisphere. So the sun where we are in northern Western Australia isn't coming up until 6:45 a.m. So my kids are awake well before then. So I like to keep the lights in the house to a minimum. We use red lights. We have a red kitchen strip light. We've got, I've taped up the fridge with red cellophane because I don't want them to be exposed to this artificial light before natural light. So that would be the first thing. The baby wakes up, you feed them, you change them, keep the lights to, I've got a couple here. You can see that red, or like an amber or a yellow, but as much as possible blue blocking. So take out the blue light of the spectrum and also the flicker. that we can't see with the natural eye unless you use a phone and put it on slow-mo, then you can see the flicker in the light. So that would be the first thing. And then as soon as the sun comes up, like even before the sun comes up above the horizon, you've got that beautiful infrared. And this is what starts that first production of melatonin. So I get my kids to walk outside first thing, you know, like, and I don't like force them out. Come on, guys, outside. I actually take the lead. So, you know, it's important to lead by example. And I will walk outside, and you know, it's just such a habitual thing for us now to walk outside in the morning. It's not like a chore to do. And so, especially my 3-year-old, he will wake up in the morning. The first thing he says, Mum, let's go outside. I'm like, yep. He knows, right? And so with the babies, I would like say, you know, my child, the first child who didn't sleep, I would just rug them up, pop them on my chest, and walk outside with bare feet on the ground, because the earth has this bioelectrical frequency that emits it through the earth and up into our body. And the most beautiful thing I found with my babies is that if they were unregulated or they were, you know, crying, I would just take them outside into the natural world, bare feet on the ground, and that bioelectrical frequency will come up through the earth into my body, into theirs. It's just like this beautiful calming for them. It regulates their nervous system. So exposure to the natural light is the very first thing that you want to start doing, that beautiful infrared. We don't need to physically see the sun coming up over the horizon. We can't physically see that from my front yard. We often actually just jump in the car and go down the streets, and we have a magnificent view of the sunrise, but that's maybe, you know, a couple of times a week, but mostly we are out the front. We can't see the sun until it probably comes maybe 20 to 30 degrees up from the horizon, but that's still perfect because we've got the frequencies of the light is emitting all around us. As long as we have no sunglasses on, you know, bare eyes, as much bare skin as possible, even if it's just the face, we're going to start that beautiful production of melatonin. There's a whole hormone pathway to melatonin, but that is the very beginning. And, you know, like you said about putting the kids in front of the TV, like when you were, you know, tired, exhausted, and just couldn't start the day with energy and, you know, getting the kids organized. I used to do the same thing. And I used to turn the TV on, have a banana and the remote ready, and, you know, that was what they would do. But this was before circadian rhythms, before I was pregnant with my third baby. And, you know, it would give me an extra hour, but I would just wake up so grumpy and so moody. And then it was such a terrible way for the kids to start because their eyes and skin were exposed to artificial light before natural light. And in my personal experience, once I removed that artificial light prior to the sunrise, it made a huge difference. And then, you know, that is the very beginning. And then you want to be able to get your child or your baby out into the natural sunlight as much as possible. So the infrared is beautiful. There's no UV. They're not going to get burnt. Obviously during the middle of the day, whereas the higher UV in summer, you know, you've got to be mindful of these things. I always say, just use your intuition. Like we know, right? If we don't need to check what UV it is, we can feel the sensations on our skin. And so, you know, just expose them to natural light as much as possible. It doesn't have to be physically out in the sun. It can be under the veranda. It can just be playing outside. Or a baby, just put them in a little rocker, or even just on the ground, but not under the actual sun. And that way they're detecting that natural sunlight. And then come nighttime, one of the most important things is, you know, what we've forgotten in year 2024 is, you know, kind of like thinking about what our ancestors did. Like our ancestors didn't have all these artificial like suns just beaming down on us. They honored the darkness at nighttime. You know, light, sunlight and darkness, the nighttime, is just as important. They're equally as important as each other. So we want to be able to block the artificial light as much as possible once the sun is down. So, and that's a huge thing that we have really integrated in our family over the last 4 years, or 4.5 years now, is either using, lights that, I've got one here that block the blue light. They're a beautiful yellow. So they not only help with, syncing your circadian rhythm, but they also help with the nervous system, right? Because if you're like you come inside, you've had this beautiful wind down, and then all of a sudden you come inside and the TV's on and it's blaring, the fridge gets opened to these big bright lights, all the LED lights are shining down on you, and the brain it cannot differentiate between natural sunlight and artificial light. The light is light, and so the brain is just like, hang on a minute, it's party time, it's daylight. And this is where kids become so wired but tired, because they get confused. The brain is getting confused and the nervous system becomes heightened, and it's like this chaos before bed. And so simply just, even if that was the one thing that you could do, was focus on blocking as much artificial light after sunset. If that was the very first thing you could do, and you don't need to go out and buy all of these light products. You can literally start from candles. Everyone's got candles, right? And that's a really beautiful way to connect as well. Turning phones off, turn the TV off, switch the down lights off, and just really keep it like simple. Just really simplify it, and then work on from there. Like, just start from one little micro step. And that's what I get a lot of my clients to do, is just start so simple. And honestly, just changing like one simple micro step has profound effects on a child's sleep, a child's mood, their behavior, like their regulated or unregulated states. It is just profound what I have experienced with my own children, but now also working with other families. It's been really beautiful to see.
100%. I always think about the analogy of the domino, with this little tiny domino, and it knocks the next domino over, it knocks the next domino over, and before you know it, it's exponentially bigger and larger domino. And every journey begins with a step. So taking that first step for you, you're saying start with the nighttime routine, wind down earlier, get some more natural sunlight. But when you do actually come indoors, it needs to be dark. You need to respect that yin yang, that night and light cycle. For us in Sydney, it's dark around about, say, 6 o'clock, a bit earlier than 6 o'clock. It's dark, like light has gone, last light is gone. For us in Sydney, it was really easy for us in the summer, this last summer. Like, we've really respected the circadian stuff. Like, nighttime, like full darkness wasn't until 8 p.m. So in the summer, we can have a late-ish dinner, say 6:30, 7 o'clock dinner, and then we can do our wind down routine, get the boys in the bath, get them into bed, read some books, and we can still do it with the natural light that's coming in through the windows, and then it's close the blinds, put the roller shutters down. We're really fortunate we've got like blackout roller shutters, which is an amazing invention for me and for the boys. And yeah, it was really good. Now we've got into winter. Something that you mentioned there was like changing the light bulbs. We've been changing all our light bulbs. We've got the block blue light bulbs. I think the sale's still currently on. It's the end of financial year sale. It's 25% off. But we've been swapping all of our light bulbs, and that's helped us tremendously with our like wind down routine. But I have a very sensitive eldest son. He is very sensitive. He's got his dad's nervous system. I'm Scottish by heritage, and we tend to be quite reactive to things. You said your youngest son also struggled with that stuff. What's the change been in him? Because your eldest son, your youngest son is so circadianly aligned and just in tune with nature. What's been the changes for your eldest? Is it your eldest son or daughter?
Eldest son, yeah. So I mean, if that kid is indoors too long, his nervous system is just like haywire. And I think it's a lot from his birth pattern as well, of how he was born into 2 weeks of literally artificial light. So yeah, he needs to spend a lot of time outdoors, a lot. And we're very, what we have created outside is intentional for the children, because it's easy to be so distracted with so many things and gadgets inside, right? Like it's so hard to get kids outside because there's so much distraction inside. So a couple of years ago, I just decided to get rid of the playroom, just like remove all the distractions inside. Like, yeah, we do still have some things that when it's raining outside or when it's really cold, they have some things to play with inside. But we have made this beautiful front yard, which is like a kid's kind of like playground wonderland. And we've got trees to climb, we've put a really beautiful garden in. We've put our veggie patch in. We've got grass for them to play cricket on. Like there's lots of activities outside, and so they are just drawn outside. And now they've got kids on the street. They're a little bit older now. My kids are 8, 6, and 3, so they're up and down the street, and they're they are outside more now than they are inside. And I can notice a huge difference if for some reason, they've been drawn inside after, so they get home from school and the first thing they do is take their shoes off, put their lunch boxes up on the bench, and they are outside, usually before they've even eaten something. They just want to get out there. They want to play with their friends. Kids are naturally drawn to nature. And when you take away the distractions, so you take away the devices, the iPads, the phones, the video games, kids become a little bit mismatched because they don't know what to do with themselves. A lot of them haven't had that opportunity to feel bored. But once they get past that, their imaginations go wild. And it's just like their imaginations will work very, effectively in nature. And so they are out there and they are just, it blows my mind what games they come up with, or like, it's just so beautiful to watch because, when you're inside and you're distracted with devices, kids become really unregulated in their nervous system, and they can become, like you said, fiery and just, off the handle and don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know how to move that energy. And so going outside, that is the perfect place to move energy in their body. It's to play, to create, to use their imaginations, to explore, to climb. Like this is the natural way that a child is meant to be doing every single day. And so, yeah, it's, it's so interesting because when I started Circadian Kids, I didn't have any intention to talk about screens or sleep. It was more just about, getting kids out in nature. And the more that I've gone on this journey with, the people that are following me, it's like people want to know, parents want to know how to get their kids off screens and how to get them out in the natural world. And they want to try and do it without having all of this pushback and setbacks. But it's going to happen, right? There's going to be some really unregulated states when you first take your children away from devices. And, like I said, you just live this way and it becomes so habitual, and you forget that actually we didn't always live this way, and most people are not living this way. And so what I have found, a lot of people that follow me, their children are using devices first thing in the morning. They are watching the TV before the sun comes up. They are on their iPads. They're on video games at nighttime until late hours of the night. They take their iPads to bed. And there is absolutely zero judgment in that, right? Because we only know what we know. And when we do find out that, hang on a minute, this is affecting a child, okay? So research shows that, suppression of melatonin long-term, and what's suppressing melatonin is bright blue lit screens in our eyes and face at nighttime especially. This, the research is showing this is contributing to things such as insomnia, ADHD, mood disorders such as depression and anxiety. And we wouldn't intentionally do that to our children, right? Like that's not an intentional thing we would do. That is just not understanding what's actually happening within our biology. And so I don't know if I mentioned, but at nighttime, red light. So red light is what we will use mostly. We do have a couple of blue blocking, more orange lights in lamps, but red light will not trigger the suppression or depletion of melatonin, or dopamine, our happy hormone as well. And melatonin is our sleep and repair and many other things, but that's the hormone that helps us to feel sleepy and helps us to have that deep, rejuvenating sleep. But unfortunately, in today's world, children are having this beautiful hormone constantly being suppressed every single night due to exposure to blue light, lit screens, LED lights, coming inside and it's daytime again. And what's happening is cortisol starts to rise and the body starts to fire up again, digestion kicks in, kids start to get hungry, they want a snack before bed, but melatonin is slowly being depleted, and that's affecting our sleep long term.
Yeah. I think there are some studies coming out that blue light is making people less insulin sensitive, raising their blood sugar. For adults, like women are getting more breast cancer, men are getting more prostate cancer. It's not just the children that are also being affected, but the adults are being affected. But today's topic is children, so we'll stay on them. Yeah, we used to have an allowance for my son, my eldest, of up to 1 hour of TV a day, and that was just way too much. But that was just the compromise we'd come to, and then he was just having these massive meltdowns. So we just were like, nah. We went down. I think we were like, oh, you can watch a couple episodes a day, and then just start of last summer, it was just like no TV. We're done. Like, you're not getting to watch TV, and we still do allow him on occasions. Like yesterday, we got home from the park. It was still light was still out. I was like, right, I need to. My wife's had just got an office chair, had been delivered for her new job that she started. I was like, right, I'll build this for my wife. You guys can watch, so they don't bug me while I'm trying to build it, because building furniture and having children around is a bit of a pain because they lose bits and pieces. I was like, you guys can watch Shaun the Sheep for 2 episodes while I build this. So we still do allow TV, but like it is a tiny fraction of their day. And my wife wakes up, gets the boys outside first thing in the morning. They have their breakfast in our granny flat with the windows and doors wide open to get as much light in. If it's not cold, it is in winter right now in Western Sydney, like talking 8-9 degrees in the morning. So that's pretty chilly. It's probably a little bit warmer where you are up in Australia.
Yes.
You're in northern Western Australia?
Yeah, like right up the top in the Pilbara. So Perth City, we are 17 hours north driving.
All right, so
Yes.
that's
So
not
kind of in the middle of nowhere.
like up there right now.
Well, it's a warmer climate up here. So we've lived up here for 15 years on and off,
Yeah.
but it is a warmer climate. But in the summer, it is extremely hot, almost overbearing. In the winter, it's beautiful. It's perfect weather. So like loving this time of the year. But in the winter, it's kind of like over east, Melbourne, Sydney. In the winter, it can get like overbearingly cold and yucky, and you can't wait for the summer. That's a bit like what our summer feels like.
Yeah, you just can't wait for the winter. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
I actually woke up this morning to frost on my windscreen for the first time this winter. So I hope
Oh
that's
wow.
going to be a chain event for the next few months. Hopefully, that was one of few. And then I'll get home from work at 11 o'clock, and I put my youngest down for his nap, and me and my son, I'll train outdoors. My son will be pottering around and doing his thing whilst I'm training. We'll have lunch outside, and then we go and do something. We try to get them out to the park, or we ride our bikes around, or we come to. I'm at my mother-in-law's house right now, sitting next to my food forest. This is my shed behind me, but I'll turn the camera around later and give you a little view of the food forest. And then we come home. As I said, in summer it was really good for us because our dinner time. We live with my mother-in-law. She helps us cook and stuff and look after the boys. Um, she is the person who kind of is the zeitgeist, so she controls the timing of food. So dinner's usually around about 6:30, which is getting later. That sun has gone down. We would love it to be earlier, but you gotta make do with what you've got in your situation. And then the moment dinner's happened, it's into bed. We've got our sweet dreams, block blue lights on. We read a book, or we have the red lights as well. My son gets scared of the red light, my eldest, so we don't put it on as much for him. And then yeah, it's bed, and we're really fortunate we've got roller shutters, so we're blocking all that blue light coming from our environment outside. So we've kind of discussed light, and the other two you said were water and magnetism. Maybe let's go to magnetism. And you mentioned non-native EMFs before. Um, what is our environment doing to our children and their development, like right now with 5G, 4G, and all the electromagnetism stuff?
Yeah, well, basically, like everything, if you think of a device, like a computer or a phone or video game or a TV, they all are positively charged. And so they're constantly trying to take negative charge from us, negative ions from our bodies. So it's constantly drawing and pulling, drawing and pulling. And, if you think about Wi-Fi, like we can't see it, like it's invisible. And so it's almost like the big elephant in the room. And I have been like passionate about this topic for over 15 years. So we have had our house completely hardwired with Ethernet cords. We've got an Ethernet cord to the TV, to my laptop, to the desktop. We don't have any other devices otherwise, but we've got, the whole house is completely hardwired. So we don't have to use Wi-Fi in our house. And it's simply you can just get like a little EMF reader, and it doesn't take much to put it up to the Wi-Fi box, the internet box, and see how much radiation it is emitting. But again, it's something that we can't see, so we don't recognize it as humans. We can't see it with our physical eye. It means for us, we don't recognize that it's actually happening. But there are, there's over 2,000 scientific peer-reviewed studies done. Actually, we can put the website below if you like. We can link it, the Bioinitiative report. And, that is just incredible when you start looking through there how, all the different radio frequencies that are constantly emitting and taking from us every single day. You think about mobile phones, phone towers, you've got like transformers outside your house, you've got what's the big one that I always ask is the electrical boxes, the smart meters. Something that I used to always ask my fertility clients was, where is your smart meter? Like, where is it located? And make sure that there's no electrical boxes or smart meters on the other side of the walls of where your bed heads are. And also where is your Wi-Fi box located? And the amount of couples that would come back and say, oh, our Wi-Fi box is in our bedroom. It's like a meter from our head. The smart meter is on the back of the other side of the wall where our bed head is. And, again, like unless we are gifted this knowledge, it's not something that we would ever, think about, right? It's just there. And why would someone put that there if it was unsafe for us? So it's really, again, it's about just becoming aware and then making small changes, not becoming overwhelmed with it, because this is not something that can just happen overnight. Same with circadian rhythms. It's this ever evolving journey. But once you know, you can't unknow it, right? It's like, okay, now I know that, I've become aware of it. What's a small change that we can do today or tomorrow, or put in plan to do, in the coming time?
Yeah, I go back to my teenage years, and a girl who was dating one of my close friends, Murray. His girlfriend wasn't allowed to go near the microwave, and I don't remember whether the Wi-Fi and stuff was turned off, but it was. You're always like, that's weird. Like, why do your parents not allow you to go near the microwave when it's on and stuff like that? And then fast forward to, I was working at a gym in Sydney, in Redfern, called Lift Performance Centre, and the owner of that gym would turn the Wi-Fi off every time his wife would come in because she was pregnant. Okay, so like there's all these like clues in my past, and now that I've made connections. And then first time round with my firstborn, we weren't turning the Wi-Fi off at night, but I think shortly after him being born, we did. And then it was phones. Turn your phone on airplane mode. And then it was like we've started to become more and more aware, and yeah, like we want to hardwire our house. Our house is a bit older. We're probably not going to live there forever. It's it's scary if you think of it from a point of fear. It's like why us and why are they allowing this to happen? But as you said, like try not to let the negative thoughts or the fear come in. Just go be forever growing and moving forward and going, all right, okay. First, it started off with turning the Wi-Fi off. Now I turn my phone's all on airplane mode if I'm around my children. We had a smart meter installed not too long ago, and I think we probably could have pushed back to the energy company and said no, we don't want it. But I, it's not actually my house; it's my mother and father-in-law's house. So that happened, and then it's on the other side of my wife's bedroom wall. So we actually put some like magnetic
Mm.
like fly screen stuff, and then we're like, actually, you know what? We should just call them and say we don't want it on. So we actually called our electrical company and said, if you want to do a meter reading, you're gonna have to come do it manually. We want the smart meter turned off. So yeah, they're some of the steps that we've taken to start to protect ourselves. But we live in Western Sydney. 5G is becoming more prevalent. You can see the little antenna arrays popping up around the place, and yeah, my story with like getting into the circadian stuff was I was already aligned with circadians, like biology, I'd say, and intuitive, as you said. But I took a job last year in February at a gym and started waking up at 4 a.m. and very quickly started getting grey hair. And I'm like, I'm young. Like, obviously, I'm susceptible to aging just as much as everyone, but I don't think this is natural and normal. So that was why I started to take the steps that I have over the last like year or so, is to start to not only protect myself, but I've learned more. And I'm like, right now, I need to protect my children, and I need to protect my family essentially from this stuff. Um, so yeah, we've went light, we've went magnetism, and you also did mention grounding earlier in, but we didn't connect that to there. You said that the Earth is negatively charged. Sorry, positively charged, negatively charged Earth.
Negatively, yeah.
We are negatively charged, but our environment is positively charged. So the electrons, the radio frequencies, are stealing our electrons. Um, you mentioned that you're always grounding and trying to get the kids' shoes off and make them touch the ground. What other ways can we start to gather up better electrons from our environment?
Yeah, just honestly being in the natural world, like being outside, bare feet, but climbing trees, kids playing in the dirt, like just even on concrete. Like my kids, as soon as they get home from school, their shoes are off, and their shoes are off first thing in the morning too. So they're outside, and because this is the thing, right? Like there's things that I cannot control outside of our home. And so I do what we can inside of our home and inside of our, the property where we live. And so first thing in the morning, kids are outside and they're not only exposing their eyes and their skin to the natural light, but they're also connecting their bodies to the earth. And this is what brings them back to their true nature, to their true self, and to their, regulated nervous system, and to feeling vibrant and healthy and happy. And, climbing trees and just like riding up and down the street, like just actually being, and not them having, because then they go to school and they've got to do, they got to do all these things. They don't get the opportunity to have their shoes off. They are under artificial light. And so there's things that, I do everything that we can at home, because then they are at school for, they've got recess and lunches. So they're under artificial light during the day for about 4 hours. But when they're at home, we don't have artificial light, and they are outside. So they come home from school and they're usually outside for about 4 hours until basically the street lights come on, which is around about 6 p.m. at the moment. And they just play, and that's what connects them back to their selves, back to connection with nature. Like that is one of my biggest things, is really like changing the trajectory of the health paradigm, like shifting the health paradigm of our children, so we can have these healthy, connected kids, not only connected with nature, but connected with themselves, with their true selves as well. And just being outside in the natural world, bare feet, that is going to bring those beautiful negative electrons up into their body and feed their mitochondria. It's going to provide more energy. It's going to help them sleep better. It's honestly, it's so simple, isn't it? You know, just like, but it's so simple, but it is not the normal way that is happening in our society right now.
Yeah, we've been divorced from nature. Humans see themselves separate to nature, but we are just as much part of nature as anything else on this earth. Um, Light, water, magnetism. What about water? What do you do for water? And like you've been talking about the electrons, and I know and you know that mitochondria produce water in our cells. So how do you think about water for kids?
Yeah, I mean, just basically, we should be drinking the most purest of water. And but I get that that's not uh, available for, you know, most of Australia, unless you're living up in, you know, mountains and you've got beautiful water that comes off a waterfall. We were just over in Queensland a couple of months ago, and we were in Currumbin Valley, and they have some of the most purest water up there, and it was just like divine, like not only knowing about where the water came from but the taste in it as well. And so where we live in northwest Australia, like we don't have the greatest water, I'm going to admit. Most of us does come from a dam, but and some bore, I think it's mostly dam, but then we have to filter the water as well. So we go to an extent to have two different types of filters on it. However, it's not perfect, but you know, I don't strive to be perfect. It's kind of an illusion anyway, being perfect. I feel that if we can really just like focus on one thing and get that down pat and make that become habitual and part of our everyday life, and then we can kind of move on to the next thing. So water is, you know, as if you can, as much as possible, drink the most purest water. If it's not available, like see whether you can buy it in. It's not possible for where we are, but I will use, I've got hydrogen filters and stuff that we use. We have to change them quite regularly because the water is very high in calcium up here. So yeah, it's not perfect, but we do take extra measures to try and have the most purest water that we can possibly have up in the northern West Australia, kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Um, yeah, we last year October we installed a whole house filtration system. I think it's like how I can't remember the name of the thing. I'll link it down below. That's changed our water situation. But then I learned about like structuring water, and now the next step for us is like there's a really good book, James Clear, Atomic Habits. It's like start with one thing and then layer on the next thing and then layer on the next thing. That's how I kind of naturally do my coaching and stuff. But I try to think of it in that way as well. It's like, all right, we've improved the quality of the water the best we can in our situation. Apologies for the airplane overhead. We've improved it the best we can. Now, what's the next step? All right, we'll take that reverse osmosis water, put it into a urn, and we try to structure it with some river rocks, and we whisper nice, sweet nothings into the water, and yeah, try to structure it that way. Um, is there anything else on that front that you do? You mentioned a hydrogen filter. What's that you're using?
Yeah, I get them through Hydrogen Health. We put them on our showers, on the fridge filtration system, and then also on the outdoor, just the one that is used to water the veggie gardens, because it is quite high in calcium, the water. So yeah, we've got there's definitely like that is one area that I would like to improve on, but we've done probably a bit more than the basics. You know, we've got it under pat, but it's definitely an area that is like on my mind. I'd love to invest in like a whole house in filtration system rather than having like all these different filters that I have to constantly change. But yeah, when it's not your own house, it's kind of like, do we want to do that just yet? We'll see if we may be moving in the next 12 months. So
Yeah,
that's something I might look into.
I think it's called Complete Filtration System is the company we used. I'll link it below. You can actually remove that when you leave. So like that's our thing. Like currently
Mm.
in Sydney, we're living with my in-laws. I would love to be in a position just to leave that filter for them and maintain it if we do. But maybe we won't be in the years when it to come. Then when we do want to move away, we want to move onto land. My wife and I and have our own space. That's the long term goal, and that's why I started my food forest. It's like I need to start understanding food production and how do we start to become more self sufficient so that we can sustain ourselves and also provide high quality nutrition for ourselves and our boys. Um, there's a light story that goes into food as well, and I was just
Mm.
elaborate on that. I listen with my graying hair and stuff. I started listening to the Jack Cruz podcast as well, and I got into it. And I was like, I started realizing that my wife's Vietnamese, they're Asian, they eat certain foods. But if I'm eating those certain foods at the wrong time of the year, that's probably giving me not the right signal. And it's actually probably causing some of my symptoms. So rather than me telling the listeners about it, I would love to hear like what's your thoughts on food and light and how are those two connected?
Yeah, like I learnt about seasonal eating in naturopathic college 10 years ago, but same with you. It wasn't until I read some blogs of Jack Cruz and listened to some of his podcasts that it really sunk in. It was like, okay, so where the food is grown, it takes in that light frequency and it stores this information that then is, we then eat that food. So say if it's come from, I don't know, Africa or somewhere, it's come, we don't have it in season at the time in Australia, but we really want it because we want to put it in our stir fry or in our smoothie. And so we go buy it at the shops because it's always available at the shops. We're talking like the Woolies and Coles, the big supermarket chains. And so then we go and eat that food, and that's what's in that food is the information, the light frequencies from where it has been grown. And so it's sending different messages to our mitochondria to what season it is. And it kind of gets confused. It's like, hang on a minute, this is not the same light frequency that my environment is in. And so when we grow our own food, because there's no food grown where we live up in the Pilbara of northwestern Australia. It's all grown in the bottom of Western Australia mostly. Besides things like bananas and papaya, more tropical fruits are grown sort of in probably about 10 hours south of us, and then also 8 hours north of us, mangoes and all that beautiful tropical fruits, but not where we live. This is more of like a mining kind of oil and gas type town. It has been here for a long, long time. There's about 20,000 people that live here, but there's no food growing here. And so I remember saying to myself, like about 5 years ago, I started growing our first food. And I remember saying to myself, I just can't wait until we have, our land and we can have our organic gardens. And I remember just keep saying this over and over. And I thought, hang on a minute, why don't I just start it now? Like if you've got a vision, you've actually got to be the energy of that vision now to be able to attract it and create it. And so I was like, all right, no, I need to start this now. So I just started from really simple. I just went to, we do have two garden shops here, which will bring in a heap of seedlings from the southwest of West of Australia. And so I just started with buying those. And that was over probably through 2 to 3 years. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I invested in a heap of organic seeds I went to this man's house. He's a grower down south of Perth, and he just has an amazing backyard, and he saves all these seeds and then he sells them on. And so I bought a heap of what I knew was going to grow well in our climate. And I started growing them 2 years ago. And then last year was the first year that I saved those seeds, and I'm growing again this year. And so that is like really cool, because that's something that I just learnt along the way. I had no idea if the seeds that I collected last year were going to actually sprout this year. And when they did, I was just like mind blown. because it's so easy to disconnect ourselves from our food and from how food is grown. And when we grow it in our own backyard or our own front yard, it connects our children back from their food source. And it's like, ah, they are so fascinated when they help me do it all. They put the seeds in. We set the little intentions with all the seeds, and then they watch them sprout, and then we pop, they grow, they put them in their salads, or and then we save the seeds, and we do the whole process. And for them to witness that is profound in this day and age, because it's something that is not taught anywhere unless you were older and went to a school that was taught specifically in that. But this is what bringing back the roots in your own family, and for them to grow up knowing where their food comes from. And so when we go to the shops, say watermelon for example is in season in the summer, so there's still watermelon in the shops where we live, but the kids know we don't buy it. We only buy what is in season. And so I always get them to check, where's it from? Is it from the USA? Definitely not buying that. That's not in season. What's the next one? That's from Australia, but where is it from in Australia? And we try and buy WA only because that is where we live. It's still not perfect though, right? Because the light frequency is different from where we live in the Pilbara to where someone lives in the southwest of Australia, where it is freezing cold at the moment in winter, and it's still like a beautiful, 26, 27-degree day here, Celsius, in the northern West Australia. So it's not perfect, but it's being aware and just making those small changes, growing what we can in season, and then buying WA local as much as possible.
Yeah, the not waiting to let it happen thing, not waiting to do it in the future, really resonated with me, because I had this realization, would have been just over a year ago now as well. Um, my wife and I had kind of come to the conclusion that we weren't going to be able to live with her parents forever. And there's also things that have just happened in over the last few years with COVID and stuff like that. Like, don't want to sound depressive, but like tomorrow is not guaranteed, and your freedom isn't guaranteed in Australia and in many parts of the world at this present moment in time. We've seen that through what happened in the lockdowns, and if I wait 5 years, well, tomorrow might never come, and I might never get that chance. So we went away to Port Douglas a year ago, my wife and I, and kind of on that trip, we kind of came back and we were like, right, we need to start making moves for us to leave Sydney, because it's not where we want to live forever. The environment here is not ideal. I'm surrounded by 5G, 4G towers, and every Tom, Dick, and Harry's got their Wi-Fi blaring. And my neighbor, I have to keep my roller shutter down at night because my neighbor has this bright blue or white light. And if the roller shutter's up just by a crack, you can't even sleep because it's just disrupting you the whole night. So we want to get out and have our own space and have our own land and do the shit we want to do, unencumbered and uninhibited by other people's stuff. So yeah, I'll spin it around. I, like you, begun to grow my own little food forest, and there's my extension over there.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's been amazing to get my son incorporated in that. Like, there's wood chips here. The first thing I did was I went on Facebook Marketplace and was like, right, let's begin the process. I need to get rid of the kayuku grass, whatever it's called, and need to start to get the soil ready for growing healthy plants. So I was like, right, I need wood chips because I need to kill the grass off. And then I went and found a guy, joined a syntropic agroforestry course. That's where my passion is. It's more the food forest side of things and animal husbandry. I don't eat vegetables very much. I do, but not as much as I probably should, depending on who you ask. I was like, right, I want to grow a food forest. I love fruit. If I can grow the fruit, and this also goes back to growing healthy human beings, if I'm growing plants that are suitable for my climate, my environment, and I can give them all the things they need, they're going to provide me with healthy, happy sustenance. So if I want to enjoy mandarins or bananas or pomegranates or avocados, the best thing I can do is grow them in the environment that I'm in, and that's going to create that loop system of sun, the water, the food, me, and won't go into human composting, right, or humanure, but one day I will begin to do humanure and completely close that loop of the food, soil, and light web. But I've learned more over the last year of like me also being aware of circadian biology, but also growing these plants. Um, Learned so much about like what do these guys need? Like they need
Mm.
light, they need water, they need nutrition and sustenance. And if I can provide all those things, they're going to be happy. And it's the same for children. It's the same for me. So I've started like to build those connections now. It's like, all right, okay, if I can make the food forest happy, I can make my children happy. If I can make myself happy,
Mm.
we're going to be way healthier. So what sort of things?
Yeah,
What sort of things have you been growing?
I love that. So in the winter now, so in the summer, the summer's interesting. Like I've tried to grow things in the summer, and all it takes is one, like, not even kidding you, 47-degree day to just wipe it all out. So I usually grow like watermelons and things that are like high water content in the summer. And I've had success, but then, like I said, it just like we had a 47-degree day come through, and it just completely shriveled up all of our watermelons. And I'd covered everything over with some uh, double, triple cloth and stuff, like because I knew it was coming. I was like, oh god, here we go. But in the winter, it's all of our salads. So kale, rocket. We grow heaps of different types of tomatoes because the kids just love tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, big Romas, like yellow banana tomatoes. And then what else have we got? Just heaps of herbs, all of our herbs, spring onions. Actually got a forest of papaya seedlings. I would have about 100. I'm not even kidding you. And this is the thing, right? This is all experiment. So I planted probably about 150 papaya seeds, and I just thought maybe a couple will grow. That's what I was told, that you might have a couple that will sprout, and I've had every single one sprout. And
They're like a weed. Hires are.
yeah. And so now I'm like, okay, what I love about this is it's gone full cycle. It was actually one of my good friends, her dad would grow papaya, and he passed away about 18 months ago, and he left her with seedlings, and she grew them into the trees and had the most amazing plump fruit, and she gave me a couple and they had seeds in them. And so then I have dried the seeds out and planted them, and so now I've got all these seedlings, and her papayas died, so I'm actually going to give them back to her now and give her a few. So it's a really beautiful life cycle going on there.
Yeah, yeah, like building that resiliency and that community. I made a relationship with a gentleman who I met through one of these online courses. It was a Syntropic Agroforestry by Scott Hall, the name of the guy is, and he had a course basically teaching you the basics. And on his membership site, it had the people who are the closest to you. And I just was like, all right, whoever's the closest to me, I'm just going to message that person and stalk them a little bit and see whether they are in a situation where they can help me. And Alistair, who's going to be a guest on the podcast in the coming weeks, he was super generous. He gave me like 2.5, 3 hours of his time. Like I just went up to his property and we had a look at his little food forest set up, and we had just chat. Yeah, it's really nice. And then he's been the guy who's actually provided me with the initial plan and the support afterwards. And yeah, I've been really fortunate, like, to have built that relationship. And it's really nice to hear that, unfortunately, your friend's papaya trees died, and now you've held onto those seeds and you've held that generation or those that inherited uh,
Mm.
health and wellness, and you're going to be able to give it back to her, even though she's lost it again, lost her father, and now lost that fruit. Um,
Yeah, and that's one thing I love during the winter is I make uh, vegetable and salad bouquets. And me and the kids will make them. And so when we go and visit someone's house, or, like there was an old guy on the corner that we always pass, he's since passed away, but we would drop him off a bouquet of, and, this is just like the way that community connects again. We've got people on our street. We haven't been fortunate enough to have a mango tree, but we have a lot of mango trees on our street, and we do food swaps. So, and the kids love that. So we'll like collect some big bouquets of salad greens, or, big punnets of tomatoes, and we'll go and drop them off, and they'll come over and drop us some bananas and mangoes. And like, that's community, isn't it? It's a really beautiful way to build it.
yeah, and it's also a mindset of abundance. It's like I've got too much for me and my family, and I want to share that with people. Yeah, I've got a mango tree, the big tree that you might have seen previously. That's my mother-in-law's Kensington Pride, or I think they also call them Bowens. There's actually another one on this side of this shed. Um, we've got an R2D2 growing in a pot, which I'm going to plant in the front garden. Like, I try to share as much of it as possible. I've got a lemon tree in the front of my garden, and my favorite gelato place. I will not be scared to admit that I still enjoy ice cream and sweets and stuff like that. I took a massive box of them to my favorite gelato place last year. They made a sorbet, and they made a gelato with it, and it was really, really beautiful.
Wow.
Enough to get a taste of it afterwards. I would like to just, I'm conscious of time. When's your hard stop? You need to be done by 12.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, quickly, would like to just jump to you more and your history with like naturopathy, and like how did you get into that, and yeah, tell me a little bit about that, because we talked about all the circadian stuff, but I would like to hear how you maybe got into that, and then how you weave that into also some of the circadian stuff or some of the clients you work with.
Yeah, well, interestingly, like I said, I believe that we go through these experiences like, for perfect reasons, and it's all divine, and there's no mistake, because my like childhood, my teenage years, and all through my 20s, right up until I was 28, I had a really awful time, to be honest, in regards to my health. It wasn't, this is why I studied naturopathy, not because I wanted to become a naturopath, but because I needed to figure out what was going on in my own body. So when I was 2, I was in and out of hospital as a kid with chronic asthma, chronic eczema, and chronic allergies. So I have always been allergic to all hair animals, and would have huge reactions. I'd have to go to hospital. That would cause chronic asthma, and my eczema was severe. It was terrible. I would wear like tracksuit pants and a jumper to school on like 35-degree days, and I would sweat underneath, and I was itching throughout the day. And so I would get home from school, and Mum would have to take my pants and my jumper off, and they would be stuck to my skin, and I would pull them off, and I would just be bleeding. And, my mum just went through so many natural treatments, and then medical treatments, and, just so much stuff trying to figure out what was going on with me. And eventually it started to ease as I got older, and she took out everything in my diet pretty much. And then, I got into my 20s, like all through menstruation, I had like the worst period pains. I'd have to have, the first 4 days off any work that I had. And I just, when I look back on it now, no wonder. I worked in hospitality from the age of 15, and I was working until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And, I was working in weddings. I was doing waitressing. So I was always working at least until midnight. And beyond. And then I struggled to get to sleep, and I would sleep in until, if it was a weekend, 10, 11 o'clock the next morning. If it was the weekday, then I would have to either go to school, or then I went to college. I did a business degree. And, I just was in this such a vicious cycle. I had a really low immune system. I was getting sick with glandular fever. And then my husband and I went traveling around the world, and that was a bit of a light bulb moment for me. But we came back to Australia and we both got into construction work. And so I was wearing long pants, long sleeve, hard hat in a what they call a donga, which is basically like an enclosed, sealed containers with no light, under artificial light, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I almost felt into a depression then. It was one of the worst times of my life. And I did that up until I was, I started naturopathy. I had a really bad experience at work and I decided that was it. I couldn't do it anymore. I quit. A couple months later, I started studying naturopathy and I worked in a health food store. That's the last time I've worked for anybody else. For the last 10 years, I've only worked for myself now. And I started naturopathy, and it was just like I based my whole naturopathic degree around fertility and hormones, because my hormones were so messed up, my immune system was so low, but also I couldn't get pregnant. So my husband and I was struggling to fall pregnant. And it was just like studying naturopathy was what I was meant to do, because I learned about my body. Prior to that, I had no idea what was going on. And looking back on it now, I was never in the sunlight. I slept. I was scared of the dark. I slept with a light on in my room most of my childhood. So I had such poor sleep. No wonder my body couldn't heal with eczema and allergies, because that's when the body heals, is at nighttime, when it's in that deep rejuvenating rest. And, then through my teenage and 20s, I never saw sunlight. I was always indoors or working until 2 o'clock in the morning under bright artificial lights. But there's no mistake in it, right? Because if I hadn't have done all that, I wouldn't be where I am now, and now teaching this wisdom to other people. It's just, there's no mistake in what happened, and there's no regret or no guilt. It just is what is, and now I can do better, and now be able to teach this wisdom to other people.
Yeah, the not being conscious or not being aware of your circadian rhythms as a younger person and developing and becoming healthy. Like, I just look back on my childhood, and my parents were very lax with my controls. I had an older brother, and they would just let me watch TV to work whatever time of the night and whatever I wanted, whether it's plus 18 movies and all the things I was exposed to. And that's not a criticism of them. They just didn't know any better. But
Yeah.
we sleep till 11, 12 o'clock or later easily, because I'd stayed up so late at night, and then getting into my teenage years partying and all those sort of things, and then getting into work and, like you, doing hospitality, working at a Rangers club, being there till 12 o'clock at night, coming home, but being so tired but wired, stimulated, and then not knowing why you can't get to sleep. So what do? You watch TV or you do something until your body physically can't go on anymore. And when I first came to Australia, I moved to Australia in 2012. I was probably in the best condition I'd ever been. I just finished playing a season in the Super League, which is like the NRL, but for a rugby league club called Salford City Reds. And I got into CrossFit, and I was buff and healthy and like vibrant. And then I took a job in the mines, and I started working at 12 a.m. and finishing at 9 a.m. And I had hurt myself before I came to Australia, but eventually this was March of 2012, October, I had surgery on my knee, had an arthroscope, and I went back to Scotland to do my recovery. I literally finished my surgery on the Friday night, and I flew Saturday morning, which is probably not recommended for blood clotting and all that sort of stuff. I don't recommend that to anyone. But I got home, back to Scotland, and I went to my old CrossFit gym on the Monday, and everyone was just on the Sunday, sorry, and everyone was just like, "Fuck, you look like shit." In 9 months of me doing that type of work, I had like ruined my health. And I'm super fortunate that I haven't developed any autoimmune diseases. I haven't developed skin like eczema or asthma or anything like that. But I got my grey hair. That was the canary in the coal mine for me, and that's what really like propelled me and rocketed me into this. Like, I need to kind of figure out what's going on there, because all that other stuff does come after that. Like if you're not aware of the warning signs, eventually you will develop an autoimmune disease or infertility. I can't tell you how many friends I currently have who I've been having conversations with recently, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we've been trying to get pregnant for a year or 2 years, and now we're considering going down the IVF route." And it's like, well, how have you thought about your light environment? Have you thought about like what things you're putting into your body? So, as a naturopath, what treatment protocols would you use to try to help someone with their fertility?
Yeah, well, I see. I didn't know about circadian rhythms when I was consulting, like in my own practice as a naturopath with my fertility clients. But everything else, like I was fully aware of the EMFs, of grounding practices. That's something I've been doing for a very long time. It was just light environment was the biggest thing that I would change now with my clients. But honestly, it was just like the simple things, like come back to such simplicity of, what is your environment like? Like even, we create so much busyness in our life and so much unnecessary stress. And the body is constantly being bombarded with these micro stresses, which add up into this, huge holistic like stress on the body. And most of the time people aren't sleeping properly, they're not eating properly, they're not drinking pure water, they're not getting out in nature. And so like really you could just do a simple prescription: get up and watch the morning sunrise, get your body and your eyes out in the natural light during the day as much as possible, block blue light at night. If you could literally just do those three things before you even think about food or anything else, and get those three things under control, because what's happening is our hormones, especially as a woman, if you're exposing, and so many women do this, like addicted to Netflix series at nighttime. I got rid of the TV at nighttime over 4 years ago. It's not something that I ever feel drawn to once the sun goes down, is to put the TV on. It feels so innate now. It feels so wrong to do. It's like, it'd be like a offense to my eyes if I was to turn the TV on after dark these days. But so many women, especially young mothers, are addicted to consuming their mind, numbing their mind with Netflix series after the sun goes down. And it's a really bad habit. And it's not only a bad habit, it's completely making our hormones go AWOL. The cortisol is rising, our progesterone is, diminished. It's causing a whole heap of circadian disruption and hormone. Like our hormones are, entrained by the sun, by light, and there's nothing separate within the body. And so if we're exposing to this non-native light, then we just, our body doesn't know whether it's day or night. We're not getting the right rest. We're not releasing and producing the hormones at the right time. And so, yeah, that's the one thing I would do, is just like a simple prescription of those three things.
So essentially, light is the master regulator, and seeing that early morning UV, sorry, not UV, that early morning red into blue is setting off a cascade of effects. And then by the time we get to nighttime, and in our modern world, we're dysregulated, we've disconnected from that cycle of the dark coming on. We're fucking ourselves up, essentially. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up there because I'm conscious of your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I've really enjoyed watching your stories and posts and stuff. And like, I see you've got your, you're doing like a 21-day family or kids circadian reset. Tell people a little bit about what you've got going on and how they can find out more about you.
Yeah, I've just almost finished the 21-day rhythm reset. So I'll be launching that again, likely the end of, like for the Southern Hemisphere, the end of winter going into spring. It seems to be a really good cusp to coming out of that winter and into spring again and into summer. Yeah, and that has just been, I've just loved that. I have loved it so much. And the feedback has just been so profound and, such simple changes. Like I give a lot of information, but then I really bring it back to simplicity. It's like, right, here is 10 things that we can look at changing this week. Just pick one. Pick one that resonates with you right now, and let's do that the entire week and make it habitual and just make it sustainable, right? Because no point like integrating all of these changes into your life, but it's not going to be sustainable. And so, like, just coming back to such simplicity of simple micro changes, and it has been profound in the way that children have responded. Simply by removing iPads in the morning and getting them outside, even if it's for like 30 seconds, right? They have registered that morning light, they've touched the earth, and then even if they come back inside, and that's just there's definitely been a lot of dysregulation with the kids removing the devices, but it's been 1-2 days, and then they forget about them. Once you take them away, they actually forget that they're even a thing. My kids have forgotten about the TV. Like, I don't even need to take the TV cord away anymore because they've forgotten about it, because they are so in tune with the rhythms of nature and the sun that all they want to do is just be outside.
So you're going to be redoing your 21-day reset in springtime. Where else can people find you if they want to just come and have a look at like what you're doing and stuff like that? Instagram, Facebook, what we got?
Yeah, mostly on Instagram, circadian.kids. That is where I hang out mostly. Facebook, I do have a page, Circadian Kids, on there as well, but most of it's shared over from Instagram. But that is where most of the people that will find me is on Instagram.
Yeah, you've got a couple of free downloads on your Instagram and in your links. Tell people about that.
Yeah, I've got 2 downloads on there at the moment for free. So one is all about your light environment at night for your children, and the other one is 3 steps to improve your child's sleep. Like, really simple but really profound.
Awesome. Jess, thank you very much. I really appreciate this. Yeah, I look forward to chatting to you again in the future. The sun has just popped out in Sydney. It's actually very warm sitting here with my t-shirt on. Thank you very much. I really, really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott.